It's really not what you know, it's who you know, because the relationships here are going to be key. You're going to have to pick up the phone, make hundreds of phone calls to different agents, the guys handling your insurance brokers, banks, or credit unions. You're going to have to make hundreds of phone calls because the very first realtor you call, very rarely is that going to be the realtor who you build that strong relationship with, who's open to working with out-of-state investors, right? So it's figuring out what that core group of your team, your boots on the ground looks like. And that literally just looks like picking up the phone and calling agents. And you can tell also by online resources which agent has sold what. You're able to take a gauge on all of these people online to be able to pick up the phone and just make some connection. Welcome back to the Pursuit of Property podcast. For the first time in 6 weeks, I checked right before we started recording. For the first time in 6 weeks, it is just Scott and I today. We're coming off a Memorial Day weekend. We're back in the studio, and just the two of us today going to break down a deal review. Scott, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. After listening to BBL Drizzy, you got to say, that hypes you up.
That is, dude. We're coming into this pod fresh and ready to go.
We're going to put a poll out to see if that should be our new intro song, but I will see. We should put that on Instagram.
Copyright free. We can enforce that and put it in immediately. So,
so stupid. Dude, good to be back. We didn't record last week. I was out of town. We got to look at some properties out in Birmingham. We're going to have the opportunity to talk about a little bit of that today, but overall, pretty good. What about you?
Dude, doing good. We've had, let's hop right into it. We've had this backdrop of about 4 years of experience now owning properties out of state. They've all been single family. And a little bit earlier this year, you and I sat down, and it took us a while after some hammering and some long discussions from a couple guys in our office who have been telling us for the longest time, dude, start looking at multifamily. Start looking at multifamily. You guys took your first step and got your feet wet a little bit with these single families, but it's time to put your big boy pants on and go out and look at multifamily. So what do you and I do? We go back to our roots, the same thing, or very similar to what we did when we first went and bought out of state. We started dedicating 1 day a week, coming into the office at 7 a.m. and doing 1 hour uninterrupted market and deal analysis, in out-of-state markets.
Yeah, people need to be thinking about this earlier than when they need to buy. Buying out of state takes time. You have to understand that there's so many ways you can go. And the first thing that we talked about was appreciation versus cash flow. Right? We've never bought in California. I personally don't plan on buying investments in California for long-term hold. And so we had to start thinking about even where we would go next. What would that market look like, feel like, things like that.
Yeah, 100%. And so we had these single families or our single family investments that have been out in South Bend, Indiana. And the first thing that we did when we came to the realization and said, okay, we're going to come and we're going to dedicate this 1 hour each week to studying not only markets, but deals. Because unless you're constantly running deals, we've talked about this before, you don't know what a great, good, fair, or bad deal will be if you're not constantly running deal analysis. We have this stuff out in South Bend, but we took a look and said, the amount of actual multifamily properties is not very much over in South Bend. And we've also had some pros and cons out there. The weather being a very big, at least con and an issue. That is, been a thorn in our side multiple times. So we had a couple buddies. One in particular, we had him on the podcast, Danny Grubb, whose episode popped off in his social clips. If you guys haven't seen them, really great dude, lots of experience in the real estate field and investment field, was like, guys, I've been buying in Alabama. Alabama is a fantastic market. Just go do your fucking research and go and jump feet first and go all in. So that essentially narrowed us down to the state of Alabama. And so we, again, over the course of, what is it now? At least 3 or 4 months of coming in and doing that research and looking in Alabama, no?
Yeah, but we also looked at Kansas City. We looked at Indianapolis. I mean, we've looked in other places, but ultimately, when we're looking at the deals, we were looking at, rent to buy ratios, and Alabama certainly had a more competitive rent to buy ratio, meaning the units rent for a more advantageous amount than what you have to pay to get into the building. Yeah. And for us, the way our model is going to have to look is, if we're going to go buy multifamily, we would like to sell and 1031 exchange, which is a tax defer, any profits from our single family. So we have a set amount that we can tax defer, and we're trying to figure out where the best place to move that to is.
Yeah. And when we talk about, right, because some people might be saying, we keep saying we came in and we did market and deal analysis, but what does that actually mean? What did we actually do? Because I feel like providing some of these tangibles to somebody either brand new and first looking out of state, whether it's single family, multifamily, storage, the process is going to be very, very similar. So where do we start?
First step is understanding where to look. If you're looking for single family, Zillow has been great to us because it's an easy place to even. Is that the question you're asking?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. The first thing you do is you look on Zillow and just see, what do homes sell for? And the easiest way to do that is to look at what's on the market. And then you go on Zillow, you just start taking a peek around. You start getting an idea of what's on the market, and then you can click recently sold, and you can see what stuff is closing at. And you may see that they're the same price, higher price, lower price, and you can get an idea of, the people that actually managed to purchase the home were paying, let's say in this case, $150,000. But homes are sitting on the market at $170,000. So within reason, there's probably a little bit of a discount needed.
Yeah, I mean, going in brand new, the free tools in the lowest barrier to entry are going to be sites like Zillow for single family, even some smaller multifamily being able to pop up on Zillow. If looking at bigger multifamily, LoopNet, being able to scroll and see deals that are on market, right? And you made that clarification. Starting with on market, it's the easiest barrier to entry. It's the quickest and the easiest way to get caught up to speed on what the market's doing, what homes sell for, and what type of condition. And I think the other key piece to that is having some sort of deal analyzer, deal calculator, whatever the heck you want to call it. I know we have a couple iterations of the ones we've used. We've shared those with people in the past. We've done several out-of-state investing presentations. So for anyone listening or watching, we have those calculators if you guys need a calculator to start looking up and running these numbers. But being able to look at stuff that's on market and then have some sort of rental or deal analysis calculator is going to be key. Now, when we talk about kind of paid things that have been really influential in helping us run deal analysis, Rentometer is by and away probably one of the most key pieces of paid subscription tools that we use. Rentometer, for those who don't know, is you can plug in the address, plug in the number of bed and bath count, the property type, and then it giving you a full-on rental analysis on the average rent that this property would rent for, the top 25th percentile, bottom 75th percentile, and giving you a really in-depth range of rent rates. Because when you're looking and doing rental analysis, that's going to be one of the key performers. When you talked about a ratio, that's key. Price to rent ratio. How much rent are you bringing in compared to the price of the property? And also just making sure at the end of the day, that's the main driver that you start with before you take out all the negatives and end up at your cash flow. So Rentometer being another key piece. That one a paid subscription, but nonetheless well worth the investment if you're going to look out of state.
Yeah. Well, so that's kind of the nitty gritty of it. The actual kind of 10,000 foot view is you start by looking and running the numbers over and over and over, seeing, are there deals that have sold that you could have even penciled or made pencil, right? Do they make any money, right? Because if they don't, there's no point in wasting your time in a market for months. But as you start to find deals that do make sense, you learn, okay, there are deals in this market I would buy. That's when you start getting more serious and you want to start getting kind of a team together. We've talked about the concept of a team, but your team is going to be the people that help you. Boots on the ground, your insurance guy, your property manager, your realtor. And so you need to start figuring out who are players that seem to be doing a decent amount of business and that know what they're doing and that can help you make good decisions. So that's the second step. Once you start identifying deals, start looking to identify who are the people that I'm going to trust to help me make these decisions.
Yeah, and I think that's a big contributor to what we've talked about before, and it's a very common phrase where it's really not what you know, it's who you know, because the relationships here are going to be key. You're going to have to pick up the phone, make hundreds of phone calls to different agents, the guys handling your insurance, insurance brokers, banks, or credit unions. You're going to have to make hundreds of phone calls because the very first realtor you call, very rarely is that going to be the realtor who you build that strong relationship with, who's open to working with out-of-state investors, right? So it's figuring out what that core group of your team, your boots on the ground looks like. And that literally just looks like picking up the phone and calling agents. And you can tell also by online resources which agent has sold what. You're able to take a gauge on all of these people online to be able to pick up the phone and just make some connections.
Yeah, for us, it helped because as we were running deals, you start seeing the same names pop up over and over and over again. And so ultimately, one of their deals made sense. And instead of overthinking it, we just called the listing agent and said, hey, we've been looking. We've seen a couple of your listings. This one, I don't remember what street it was on, but it started with a P.
Pearson, I think.
Pearson Avenue. Yeah. Hey, this house or this building on Pearson looks like something we'd be interested in. And he right off the bat was like, well, shoot, we just accepted an offer, right? But we don't stop there. We said, well, hey, we're still going to be looking. We've seen a couple of your deals. Are you aware of any other properties that are similar to this that might be coming up? And you start developing a relationship, right? If they're a good realtor, they're going to start qualifying you. They're going to be figuring out where funds are coming from. Have you ever done this before? Where are you located? What's your experience look like? But you can start developing that relationship just by demonstrating a real interest in a property that they had, right? If they've got a lot of listings, they probably have more coming.
Yeah, and you make a good point with someone on the other side looking and saying, okay, well, what if I have no experience? I don't own any rentals. What kind of credibility can I really bring to this agent or anybody that I'm trying to build a relationship with? And that's the knowledge piece that comes beforehand. When you can walk into a conversation knowledgeable about the market, you've been running your numbers, you can reiterate kind of what you've seen been going on in the market and in these neighborhoods that you're looking at. And you can either get that confirmation or rejection from that agent when you're able to break down kind of that for them. When you come in knowledgeable, when you come in confident and prepared, that's the piece that's in your control. Whether or not you've done a deal, until if you're coming in with no deals, that's out of your control. But if you're coming in knowledgeable, prepped, prepared, and up to date on what the market's doing, it allows you to come across as a lot more verified figure or someone more serious than just kind of some willy-nilly dude or gal from California who just wants to buy out of their state.
Yeah, you have to kind of also expect some people aren't going to love that you're based out of California. Yeah. Right? So you have to be able to explain, hey, I've been doing my research every week. I spend an hour going through the listings. I'm seeing the homes that I'm interested in. They're typically 3 bedrooms, 1 bath. They're selling around $150,000. I would be open to buying something like that if I see the rents are in the ballpark of $1,400 a month or whatever it is. When you can start sharing those details to show that you've been paying attention, that's how you buy into that relationship. Dude,
so let's hop into the deal we're talking about today. So that's the preface of this, right? So this is months of intentional, dedicated time to doing this research, making the calls, making these connections. And then, lo and behold, this relationship with this agent that we've been calling, building a relationship with, building credibility with, we get an email about a triplex over in Alabama, and take it from there, because things really moved very quickly from once we got that email.
Yeah, no joke. This year has been weird because, working with the team, I don't have a ton of overhead. And so my income is very liable to taxes, right? Mm-hmm. So I need to start thinking about tax prep before I get to the end of the year. So Kayla and I had a conversation. We want to buy some properties. We're going to start looking. I had made a couple offers on a property, a 6-unit property in Indianapolis, but it never ended up coming together. And so out of the blue, we did our research on Tuesday morning. We sent a building that we're still looking at to our agent. And we just said, hey, we noticed that your sign is on this building in Google. Like, they right off the bat, oh, we used to manage it, which again, when you start seeing the same people, that's one of the blessings, is they may know more than you do about a building.
Yeah.
The very next day, they send us an email and it's like, hey, this is smaller than what you've been looking for. Here's a triplex. And you and I talked right away. We're not looking for a triplex. There's no 1031 option. It's not doing what we want to do.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, Cade, why don't I just look at it for myself? And you're like, go for it. And so in the email sent by the realtor, he's like, this is an off-market triplex. It's going to be getting listed next week. You guys seem serious. If you have any interest, let me know. The price is $160,000. He sends over, a rent roll. He sends over an insurance estimate that the seller's currently paying and the current property taxes. So when you underwrite a deal, the big things you need to pay attention to are, what's my gross rent? What are my taxes, insurance, mortgage, vacancy, repairs, management? Those are typically the big things. So right off the bat, he gave me rent, insurance, and taxes. I was going to budget 7% for vacancy because 2 of the units were vacant or getting rented at the time, and 1 was in an eviction, right? The whole situation is difficult, but looking at it cash flowed a few $100 a month. It was like $400 or $500 a month pretty easily. And so within like 2 hours, I called the agent back and was like, hey, I'll buy it for $150,000. And he said, great, I'll type up an offer. I printed it, signed it, emailed it back. And later that day, I got a response saying, hey, it's accepted. So it was like, as fast as I wasn't even looking for a triplex when I woke up that morning to we were in contract by 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it was like lightning.
Now, we've shared this before. When we bought our first package of 4 single family homes out in South Bend, right? They were on market. We got our offer accepted and we closed escrow to purchase. We own them before we ever flew out there. And I think that's a discussion point people always ask, and people may have differing opinions on, is, do you need to fly out there and see these things before you buy them? Now, this all goes down super quick, right? Wake up, get that deal in your email. 3 hours later, you're under contract. What's the thought process here in a new market with flying out, staying home? What does that kind of look like from there?
I set the expectation with the agent that I would want to do a home inspection, right? So the biggest learning lesson from Indiana was that the homes we did home inspections on went way better than the ones that we didn't. And even though we bought the ones without the home inspection for less, right? So we got them at a cheaper price and they were still a worse deal. So whenever you have a deal like this, it's important, you're not going to know everything about that market. Just pay the money for a home inspector to really be eyes on the property for you. The blessing was the agent I already trusted was managing the property. And so he knew the area, and I trusted him to have a lot of the information, because at the end of the day, if I'm going to use him as my property manager, he doesn't want to give me bad information and cause issues for himself. So I had set the expectation like, hey, I'm going to do a home inspection, assuming nothing crazy on the home inspection. Should be good to go. Like, it's a cash deal. He had set it up for a 30-day inspection contingency, which I thought was surprising. I don't normally see him that long. But I said, like, let me work on getting my earnest money in, and then I'll let you know if I can fly out, but I'm going to definitely do a home inspection. So that was my first read on it.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, that biggest takeaway, we've recommended this always to people. And it's a little weird, right? Because on a lot of the properties that, you know, our team is purchasing here in the Valley, we move very, very quickly, right? We're not doing inspections on really any of them. Very, very few.
We're buying them at a significantly cheaper price than an on-market deal.
And I think that's the key piece for people to understand is you can still value add to these, you know, when you're looking to buy out of state, if it's off market or it's on market, you have the value add of, hey, I can close fairly quickly. I may or may not be able to pay cash, but I at least want a small window, if at all, non-negotiable. I need a small window inspection contingency to go and do a home inspection. Always, always, always is what we recommend.
And a home inspection is going to put the home in the worst light for you.
Yeah.
Like, you always feel the worst when you get your home inspection back, even if it's a fairly clean home, just because that's the home inspector's job. And then from there, you look at the real costs that you're going to incur, and then you make a decision. So you always know when you get a home inspection, you're not going to feel good when you get it back. That's just the nature.
So, and again, correct me if I'm wrong at this point, right? A home inspector in a new market, it's just like anybody else as your boots on the ground. A home inspector is going to be a very big key piece, because if you're looking at doing a deal in this city or this market, most likely you're going to keep on looking for additional deals in there, right? So you called up, again, you picked up the phone, you called more than one, you called multiple different home inspectors, home inspection companies before, hey, okay, these people seem reliable, they seem legit. After talking to a couple resources and past clients, these people, you know, I feel good about moving forward with this company. Boom, get it scheduled and on the calendar.
Yeah, I asked the agent who he recommended, and he didn't want to give me a specific name because he felt like there was liability involved, which I get it. But I did ask if he had seen any of their reports before, and he had only seen one. And that told me, okay, he said one of his clients had used this company before. He didn't say if it was good or bad, but my guess is he wouldn't have even referenced their name unless he had had some good feeling about it. So I ended up getting quotes, asking what they do, explaining my situation. And I ended up picking somebody, and it was $1,200 to do a home inspection for all 3 units. Some people would say, wow, that's a lot of money. $1,200 just to get a report. I mean, yeah. Or you can think about, if you buy the property and then you missed something, what happens then? You're almost definitely going to be more than $1,200, right?
A report for us on some of our homes we've since sold off in Indiana would have saved us tens of thousands of dollars. So
yes,
a very well worthwhile investment, regardless of if something pops up and you don't end up purchasing it or not. I think it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah. Up and until this point, everything was pretty smooth. And I think that's the blessing. And so I booked tickets. I said, okay, I'm going to fly out to Alabama. The reason I flew out to this one was because we had 2 different properties we were looking at. One in contract as the Triplex, and the other property that we had sent to this realtor asking about, that we are still currently in negotiations over. And so I said, well, I can walk 2 homes or 2 properties at once. One I'm in contract for, the other seems likely. It's worth our time.
Yeah.
Right?
And also, I mean, not to get too derailed, but also it put you, a state or 2 away from some family where you got to make a little bit of a trip out of it, right? So, yeah, I think that's the key piece here when talking about, to bring up again, do you need to fly out? Do you not need to fly out? It worked out great for you to be able to go, and we're able to walk both properties in person, and we'll get to that in a little bit or up next. But still, I think the note to make is there's pros and cons to both, right? If you're flying out, you are taking time and money. Those are very 2 big things that are taken away for you to go and fly out.
The trip was more than $1,200.
Yeah. See? And so, but I think one of the biggest pros to flying out is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's a level of credibility that comes to the person behind the phone. You were able to meet the agent that we've been talking to all these past couple months in person, provide that handshake face to face, and really just put some credibility to the person behind the phone. And I think no matter what people say, that is usually always a positive. That's usually always a positive to come out by going and maybe seeing this property in person and meeting some of these people in person, because they get to put a face to the name.
And it demonstrates good faith, right? They're putting in all this work. You're taking the time out of your day to go fly out to this place and look at it to show you're serious. And this is where it's important, because this deal did not end up going smooth. But in an ideal world, it doesn't affect the relationship because there was goodwill proven by taking the time going, right?
Dude, yes. So you said, okay, up until this point, things are going pretty smooth. You book your tickets, you fly out there, and you've got the walkthrough scheduled.
Before I even flew out there.
Yeah.
It started going south before I even flew out there.
Oh, shit. That's right. Okay. Before you flew out, but tickets are at this point.
Yeah, tickets are. So, yeah, let's rewind a bit from the walkthrough. At this point, we were about a week into escrow. We had home inspection set up. And the next thing that you have to start doing when you're in contract is start figuring out insurance, right? Mm-hmm. Insurance is always an important part. And so off the initial analysis, the current owner is paying like right around $2,200 a month. When I did my insurance request, and coincidentally, the agent that I was working with, their business has an insurance branch, right? And so going right over to his insurance guy, the quote came in 175%. It was like $3,700 a month or something, or $3,800, or excuse me, a year.
A year, yeah.
So the prior owner was paying $2,200 a year. Mine comes in at $3,800 a year. Well, what does that do to your cash flow? What happens?
Eats into it.
It just crushes it. I mean, right off the bat, there's a big chunk of your cash flow missing. And it's important because you have to keep in mind that rents don't just change because insurance changed, right? Rents change when the market goes up or when you improve the property. Mm-hmm. Paying more for insurance doesn't change the value of the property to the tenant. At the same time that the insurance came in really high, the seller decided to rent one of the units. And so I had already gotten ideas of what rents looked like in that area. And right off the rip, it was two 1-bedroom, 1-baths and 1 2-bedroom, 1-bath. And the bigger unit got rented for $675, which was less than we were expecting. So at this point, we're looking, rents are going down from what we were budgeting when we made the offer, and insurance is higher than what was sent to us to begin with. Now, at the end of the day, is it the end of the world? No, but you start adding these things together, you know, your rent is less, your costs are more, you only have a few $100 to play with in cash flow. At some point, you have to look at the numbers and say, okay, does it make sense anymore? Right? I start seeing that before I even flew out to Birmingham. But you and I had a discussion. It was brief, but it was like, what is there to lose? The tickets are paid for. There's a family trip tied to it. I still get to go walk the other unit. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be boots on the ground, in quotes, to go see Birmingham and have a better idea of what the market is over there. And so I flew out anyways. But right before I flew out, the home inspections came back, right? And this was just a third nail in the coffin. On the home inspection, there were foundation issues, roof issues, plumbing issues, electrical issues, and none of the units have HVAC, right? So none of them have central heating and air. I knew that last part, but the other 4 were all new to me.
Very hard to tell that type of information without a home inspection. To our eyes, everything we can see when walking through a home is very cosmetic. Most of that stuff is behind the scenes. It can only be found by a professional who's going in and doing that in-depth inspection.
Yeah, and crawling the crawl space and going into the attic. What was interesting, though, is when I think back on it, we were able to see the vacant units that were marketed for rent, and they looked super clean. And when I walked them, I don't remember them looking exactly like that, but it may just have been because the photos were from before the prior tenant had rented. But it was definitely different to walk it in person than looking at the photos, right? So Needless to say, going into the trip, there was definitely warning signs, right?
So you end up, right before you leave, you basically have all of these 3 nails that are in the coffin. You've got the home inspection back. You know, when you land and you walk these units, you've already got the worst as expected with these whole host of issues, right? You've got the insurance that's eating your cash flow already, and then the rents eating the cash flow from the top to the bottom. Your top line rents are lower than expected, so your cash flow is eaten into. What's the thought and the intention when going in to walk the units? Because I know you're also there with the agent who is not representing both sides, but brought the deal and is facilitating the paperwork with the seller involved as well.
I think at that point, I just had to set the expectation with the agent that as the deal currently stands, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I explained exactly why. There's value in being a realtor myself, right? I mean, it demonstrates a level of knowledge, but you don't have to. I just articulated that, hey, you saw the insurance quote. You saw the difference in the original numbers and now. And he's like, yeah, insurance is way up. Okay. I mean, it is what it is. And then I brought up, hey, rent seemed lower than what we initially expected. Yeah, but the seller's kind of in a rush. She's trying not to lose more money. So she just wanted to get this thing rented. And it's like, well, she signed a 12-month lease. So I'm inheriting that lower rent, right? And then I said, hey, did you look at the home inspections that I paid for? No, not yet. He goes, do you have anything that came up that you were concerned about? I said, yeah, there's a couple things. And what was important there was I didn't scroll to all the photos of the drywall and chipping paint and stuff like that. I just scrolled to the big ticket items. I said, hey, there's a 4-foot section of the foundation that's missing. I don't know how that is even possible, but I see the bricks stacked up under one of the supports.
Yeah.
Like, this is a big deal, and I think that needs to get looked at by a foundation guy. Mm-hmm. My guess is it's not going to be cheap. His exact response was, yeah, it's probably going to start in the low 5 figures, meaning 10,000 or more.
Yeah.
And then I pointed out the roof and some of the plumbing and some of the electrical, and he was able to explain some of the plumbing and electrical. But at the end of the day, I just said, well, I was looking at this at $150. What do you think a fair price is?
Oh, I got to bless you.
I don't think I've sneezed on the pod before.
No, I don't think you have either.
I will have to say, in Alabama, dude, I had the worst allergies. The weather there is totally different, which was a whole different thing. But I just asked him, I said, what's a fair price? And again, he's an agent. I'm an agent. He's not really representing me or the seller.
Yeah.
He's doing the paperwork. So he's not really able to speak on behalf of the seller. But he said, you know what? I don't know. You tell me. And I said, I mean, it's got a pencil. At this point, I'm paying a pretty hefty penny to buy it. I can see, easily about $20,000 in, these big ticket item repairs, not even cosmetic, and it doesn't cash flow. So that's not going to work. And he asked me to go back and figure out what price I'd be willing to pay. And I think this is when it really set in that, like, okay, this deal isn't going to make sense unless there's something dramatic.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong too. I think this is another credibility piece that helps, right? Because, we're never in the business of, opening escrow on a deal. Our intent is to purchase that property, right? But this is why we have the inspection contingency to see some of these things that we don't know going in.
And I did show him my numbers from when I made the offer.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Being able to have that credibility piece of the rental calculator, the deal analysis, whatever you want to call it. I remember literally you saving it as a PDF and sending it over to the agent and say, hey, here's everything that I'm seeing. Is there anything I'm missing?
Here are my assumptions. Please let me know if anything is off.
And he took a look and he was like, no, all of these are legit. This is, well put together analysis. Like you're covering all of your bases here. So again, another credibility piece there. Like I'm not just messing around throwing willy-nilly numbers out there. Here's my actual, Excel, Google Sheet analysis of what I'm seeing. Am I missing anything?
And I threw in my earnest money. Within 6 hours of getting the wire instructions, earnest money was submitted. As soon as I had a home inspection company I liked, we scheduled it.
Yeah.
As soon as I could get out there, a flight was scheduled. I mean, all these things show that I'm being serious. I'm not trying to just pull somebody around. This was not an expected price reduction.
No.
Regardless, after I walked the Triplex, I went and walked the other building, had lunch with that guy. And then I got back to the office, and that's when I really had to sit down, and I'm going to pull out my spreadsheet because this was not an easy thought process. But when you look at these deals, your motivation matters a lot.
Yeah.
Why am I buying this property? And for me, there were multiple parts. One, cash flow. At the end of the day, I want a building that's going to cash flow. Two, there's some upside in appreciation. Three, there's a lot of tax benefits. So the real reason I'm looking at buying right now is for tax purposes. And so I have to keep in mind that there are some benefits to buying a property outside of cash flow and appreciation for me. So that's when I started having to sit down and really think about it and jump on the phone with Kayla and say, okay, what are we going to do? Right? So I sat down. The first thing that popped up is that my cash flow was negative. I think it was $310 a month.
With the revised numbers, with the new insurance?
Yes, with the revised numbers. So the important part here, on the initial numbers, it cash flowed $450.
Boom.
Using seller's insurance.
Yep.
Expected gross rent. And initial estimation of what my mortgage would be.
Yes.
Then when I start inputting the real rents to see what things are actually renting for, when I change the price, or excuse me, before I change the price, but when I add water, sewer, which popped up, landscaping, which popped up, insurance, which was more, and property taxes, which were marginally more, I was already, like I said, negative a couple $100.
Along with the reduced, like you said, reduced rent. So you're going from net positive anticipated cash flow of, $450 to now negative a couple $100.
Correct. And the biggest difference came from the mortgage was a little more than we were expecting. It came out to about $707 a month. And that has to do with rates changing so frequently. It had been 3 weeks since I had last looked.
Yeah.
And then also landscaping, insurance, and water and sewer costs eating into it. Those are things that were not fully disclosed at the start.
Yeah. And not to say that, you're also walking into a property that now needs $20,000 more bucks to bring it up to speed because of the issues found in the inspection.
The initial deal required me to leave about $40,000 in it to make the $400 a month. I thought that was a pretty good return.
Yeah.
This next deal is looking at putting $60,000 in to lose a few $100.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is that's at the 150.
Okay.
The easiest number to change is going to be the purchase price, right? It's harder to get rents to just magically go up. It's harder to get insurance to just magically go down. And the person for insurance, because people are curious about this, was a broker who sent multiple different quotes. The most competitive bid was the 175%. And then lastly, there was a couple options for billing back water and sewer, or getting the landscaping done by a tenant for cheaper rent, which doesn't really fix the problem.
Yeah.
If rent's going to go down, it's still a loss.
Yeah.
So at this point, I started thinking, okay, the easiest thing to change is the purchase price, because then I can refi less money, and less money means a lower mortgage. So our experience has been, you always anchor, right? And so I was asked, what price would you be willing to just close right now on? And I told him 100,000. And the reason I said 100,000 was because I don't know what the number looks like, but at 100,000 for 3 units, I will figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. And I knew that she wouldn't take it. That's the other part, is this person paid 150 a year ago, and I knew that she was not happy with her investment. So I explained, hey, you're selling it because it doesn't make sense. I'll pay 100,000. I'll close on it in 2 weeks, and you're done. And they came back after 3 or 4 hours and said 135,000. So I have those numbers in front of me right now, and we're going to go through it. Because I almost took 135. I almost did because I was like, $20,000 new in repairs, $15,000 discount. I'm leaving $5,000 in, but I was still lower rent, higher expenses.
Yeah.
Am I rambling? I feel like I'm rambling. Okay.
No, this is good.
Okay. So here's how it broke down. If I paid $135,000, my mortgage balance was going to be about $101,250 when I'm all done. My payment is $707. That's what it is at $135. My total rents were $1,825. Now, my total rents when I first ran it were about $1,800, but looking at it, I'm being pretty aggressive on these rents. I was told they're probably going to be less, but I'm saying, what do I think we could, in an ideal world, go to? Because I would like to buy this building. I've already spent all this time.
Yeah.
But with a 5% vacancy, that puts us down to $1,733.75. So we're just making just over $1,700 a month in rent. The ongoing sewer and trash was sewer and water was $120. The insurance was $318 a month. Property taxes were $245 a month. So your total fixed costs were $683. So again, you're making $1,733. Your mortgage is $707, so you're down to $1,000. Then you take off another $683. You're just under $400 a month.
Yeah.
So why does that not make sense? Maintenance and repairs, capital expenditures. These are the two things that you constantly have to do on rentals. Maintenance and repairs are fixing things constantly. Capital expenditures are improving things, right? Making the place better so that you can get more rent. Then the last thing is management. They were managing this building for 10%. They said they would do 10%, no less. So maintenance and repairs, capital expenditures, and management fees, that's another $456. So your total expected monthly cash flow is negative $113 a month. Your expected monthly deposit, assuming there's no repairs, no capital expenditures, is $251 a month. So let's talk about that. Why do we run it off of cash flow, not expected deposit, Cade?
Because you can't expect to walk into a building and not have anything go wrong and not have to put any money into the property.
Especially when 2 units are vacant. They just got vacant.
This isn't some new build triplex that's brand new out off a new construction builder, right? This is an older property where no matter what, when you walk into it, something will always pop up. Always. If not, like very, very frequently, do you need to put money aside for money to be fixed on the property? And like you said, improvements. Because otherwise, if you go months and years without making those capital expenditures and improvements, your rent can't go up and your property starts to deteriorate.
And an example of a capital expenditure would be like adding central heating and air.
Yeah.
So I did the math on that. That was $6,500 a unit. There are 3 units. I am currently budgeting $91 a month towards capital expenditures. How many years would I have to get perfect cash flow to be able to afford that? If you're going to be doing that, you need to be making money. What about you're budgeting $182 for repairs? How many months do you think you and I have gone through where we had less than $182 in repairs? I can't think of a single one.
I can't think of a single month. I know, I was going to say.
Our experience with 5 homes has been you always go over $182.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be a pest service. That could be a door frame, right? There could be plenty of reasons why you need those repairs.
A sink leak, like literally anything, like any random thing that could pop. Exactly.
Tenants are very hard on properties. So you have to expect that there's going to be repairs needed. So that's why I looked at it. I had a conversation with Kayla and I just said, look, this loses us $113 a month if everybody pays and they only have this amount in maintenance. I said, at the end of the day, what are our tax benefits, right? Because again, the other part of why I bought this was tax benefits. And she went through it. And at the end of the day, it didn't make us cash flow. Appreciation in the area was not going to make up for it. And the tax benefits just weren't worth it. So we ended up pulling the plug on the deal and just said, hey, I don't want to drag your seller out. 135 doesn't work for me with the new numbers. Like, just let's cancel.
Yeah. What would you have done differently, you think?
I probably wouldn't have flown out. If we didn't have the other building, I would not have flown out. So hard to say for certain.
Yeah.
Because that building is definitely a bigger deal for us. We've never done multifamily, and being able to go see it in person gives both of us more confidence.
100%.
But I probably wouldn't have flown out once I got the home inspection, the insurance quote, and the lease.
Yeah.
I think at that point, the deal already didn't make sense. And had I renegotiated and it made cash flow sense on paper, I may have flown out at that point just to double check. But even when I walked it, it didn't confirm anything new to me. There was nothing that was hidden that was like, oh, there's a way to make money now. It was more for my own peace of mind of seeing it and knowing where it's at. And
was there any worry of canceling with, kind of the relationship with the agent we had been talking to now?
For sure.
Like what kind of played through your head when moving forward and canceling? Like, obviously at the end of the day, it just didn't make sense anymore. So you're not going to force it to buy a building just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
Right.
I told Kayla that. I said, my concern is I don't want to cancel the first deal we made an offer on, because these guys brought this to us off market. It's taken 30 days. This seller could have potentially had it on the market. So I still wanted to go out, shake their hand, and demonstrate good faith. I honestly was hoping there was going to be something that was like, oh, the home inspector called this out and this is ridiculous. This is super clean, blah, blah, blah. Didn't happen that way. But yeah, I was definitely nervous. But at the same time, do I want to work with somebody who's going to get upset when the numbers change and they don't make sense, right?
Well, and when we look at it again, it's like controllables versus uncontrollable. Like that's what the due diligence period's for. Everything that was within your control was done very smoothly and communicated that way. And like, dude, like this stuff that's out of your control is what popped up in the property's true property condition and what the seller was willing to sell it for. And at the end of the day, a deal's got to be a deal in order to move forward.
And it was important that I was quick on my analysis. Once I walked it in person, I told him, these are my concerns. He asked me, where can you pay? We gave him that number. And within that day, we made a decision. So, I mean...
Still moving quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. At the end of the day, I was quick. The same way I was quick to make a decision to pull the trigger, I was quick to tell him where it would make sense with the new information. And as soon as he said, hey, it's not going to work, I said, okay, no problem.
Dude, some cascading messages. It's been a while since we've done a deal review. I mean, specifically towards rentals and out-of-state stuff. And I mean, I think it's a good reminder for everybody. I mean, some cascading messages. One, being intentional with your time to research your market and build your connections. You need to know what a great, a good, and a bad deal are. And then you need to build credibility with your boots on the ground, because you're not going to be able to invest out of state without a team, right? So being intentional with your time to research, running your deal analysis, doing a home inspection if you go into contract, and knowing that, hey, I'm at the end of the day, at any point when you were in escrow, did you lead the seller or lead the agent you were always open and transparent about what your goal was, how you were running your numbers, and just from the get-go, being open and honest. And I think all of those things combined, if you approach that in buying rentals and trying to build something out of state, you're going to be very well equipped with doing each and every one of those things.
And I sent him my final deal analysis at 135, and I said, hey, the numbers don't work. Unless I'm missing something, let me know. And he responded, your assumptions look great. Everything looks accurate to me. Deal doesn't make sense. So even he agreed.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, like, being transparent with the agent that you're building that relationship with is important, so that they know what you're looking for.
Dude.
And there's no point in buying a deal that breaks even. If I want to buy a deal that breaks even for $60,000 down, I could probably do that in California.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose of what your and our goal is by looking out of state. It is for that cash flow. We're not looking out of state to break even. So, dude, this was a dope deal review. I'm excited. I know you shared we're still in the midst of doing our research and active negotiations with a potential multifamily building out there. Obviously, if that comes together and closes at any point, we're going to be bringing a very big deal review back to you guys, which will be really exciting. But nonetheless, I think, dude, it was great to sit down and do another deal review, talk about out of state a little bit. It's been a while. And I know even though it's been a while, we've still been talking about it, I feel like with other people just as much. So.
Yeah. No, and learning lesson moving forward. We're getting this other unit. We're getting insurance quotes before we make an offer. We're verifying market rents. That one's fully occupied, so it's a little easier. We walked it before we were in contract. So we're taking the learning lessons from this one and moving it to the next deal.
That's it, dude. All right, everybody. We will see you back here next week on the Pursuit of Property podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, sir.